Hello. Theoretically, I am streaming now. I'm a little sick, so I apologize about that. But yeah. We're going to be doing 9.2.0 differencing tonight, although I mean, differencing is in however many sarcastic quotes I can possibly add to it. Yeah, I don't have coronavirus, I'm pretty sure. But you know, you never know. It is always a question. Let me go link this in Reswitched. I should do this. I think it's literally only Kurt in the chat right now. Hey Dubs, hey Matt. Yeah, I'll give people a few minutes to filter in as usual. Hey Valiant Stormed. I'm not expecting this to be a super long stream tonight because Trust Zone didn't change and there's like almost nothing to diff, but it's fine. I figure diff will update atmosphere. I'll publish an atmosphere release, and then I'll talk about future streaming plans, since it's been a while, and I have concrete plans to talk about, and I don't know that I've talked about them very much, outside of if you've been following really closely and Reswitched. Hey, John Jaded. Hey, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, but Baozet, and then a word that I know means princess in Japanese, but I don't know how to pronounce. Hey, Giratina. Yeah, we are giving people a few minutes to filter in. Hime? Yeah, I'll believe that, but I also don't want to make mistakes pronouncing things. Yeah, there's honestly relatively little to diff tonight. Oh, am I quiet, H. Corion? I can increase my volume a little, but that's been like a recurring complaint. One sec. Okay, I'm probably a little louder now, if only a little. Maybe even a little louder now. But yeah. Tasks for tonight are going to be to diff 9.2.0. I mean diff. I already know exactly what's changed because only 2 instructions changed total in the entire operating system. But diff on stream, update atmosphere, talk about plans for future streams because I'm going to be streaming a lot more pretty soon. Adubs knows that I'm working with him on getting a pull request into Atmosphere, and once that's done, I will start streaming my development for the kernel. What instructions would those be? By instructions, I mean individual units of code inside a couple of programs in the OS. In particular, an instruction changed in the kernel and an instruction changed in the process manager, and you'll get details when I diff on stream in like a few minutes. Tatsuma asks, is Log Manager reimplementation still planned? Yeah, it is still planned. It's kind of fallen by the wayside for the same reason that everything has fallen by the wayside in that sense, which is I still don't have cross-platform USB. But it's on the list of things to do. I'm still interested in doing it. Giratina asks, how would I get into development for Switch? Look at the wiki, read the Switch examples, set up DevKit Pro. It's pretty specific, but there are tutorials and examples of Switch homebrew applications, and the best way to get started is just to dive straight in, to be honest. Hey, Sammy Husky. Okay, we probably have enough viewers for me to get started. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Calcio stuff after I'm done differencing. That's on the list of topics to discuss. Oh man, it's the guy with the super funny name again. God, I know I laughed about this the last time you were here, Big Daddy UK666, and your name is still really funny. Thank you. Okay. So, let's get started. The first thing to do when diffing a sysupdate is just going to be to go to my documents, go to sysupdates, and download the latest sysupdate. So let's python sysupdate.py. I've showed this script in a more recent stream. Well, not a more recent, an older stream, I guess. It's basically a script that I wrote that just automatically downloads system updates directly from Nintendo server. So now we wait for it to download. We know from nin updates. Let's actually just check twitter.com. Let's say bot. Let's check so I can show this. The only thing that updated in 9.2.0 was the firmware packages and the system version title that says what version it is. So this was just it's 9.2.0, and this contains Trust Zone, the kernel, and all of the built-in system modules. And almost nothing changed. It's actually really funny how little changed. And so, yeah, this will be really quick and easy. Okay, it's all downloaded. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to extract package 2, which is the bit of the firmware that contains the kernel and the built-in system modules. 819 is the title or program ID, data ID, whatever you want to call it, for the firmware. There's package 1 and package 2. And then let me make another window and open it for 9.1.0 so that we can do differencing. Updates. This is 9.1.0, which I downloaded on a previous stream. Okay. And I already have this extracted, but the way that I extract this is simple. Just do hack tool -t package 21. Vector is out. Extract. Wow, that was really bad. Cool. And that'll extract all of the built-in system modules and the kernel to the format that I'm used to dealing with them in. So, when I say that only one instruction changed in the kernel, here is what I mean. If we open the 9.1.0 kernel and we open the 9.2.0 kernel, if I do a comparison, there's this data change at 34CO. Let me actually expand the window a little bit so that we can see this a little better. So data compare. This instruction change, which is these 4 bytes, and then the next change is like 2 megabytes in, and this is actually the process manager kip. This is a change inside PM, which is embedded in the kernel, and we do that, and then like the GNU build hash changed for PM, and that's it. There are almost no changes, so there's basically nothing for us to diff, but we're gonna do this anyway. So the first thing to do is gonna be open up IDA. Let's take this, let's drag and drop the kernel in. And we have a loader for IDA for the kernel that's on GitHub. You can use it if you want, and that'll load this in. Cool, and now the kernel is all loaded. And then I'm actually gonna go to documents because I copied my actual database for the kernel into this. Yeah. If I open this, this is my working database for the 9.0.0 kernel. I have a lot of stuff labeled, and this is what I've been using to write Mesosphere. Archidate asks, are you a Jiang Ying fan? No, actually. You may notice license to Michael Sire. I purchased IDA. It costs roughly $5,000. It's $5,000 better than Ghidra. That is a running joke that I have. Ghidra, sorry. But I have found the purchase of IDA to be completely worth it. And it is something that I use every day, and the improvements in the newer versions have been very, very worthwhile to me. But yeah, so there's almost nothing different. Let's actually reopen those. Let's go to this. Let's go to this. Did I just open the same thing twice? Yeah, I did. Okay. I know the data change was at like 34CO, but I want to check that anyway. Yeah, so the data change here is at 0x34CO. And so let's go ahead. I know that the kernel is loaded at 8,060,000 or 800 or 60,000. And so go there, 00634CO. And 80634CO. And we can see that this instruction changed a value being moved into a register from 0x384 to 0x3A5. And if we decompile this, because I have this labeled properly in my actual implementation, we can see that what this is doing is this is setting the number of K sessions that are supported. That is the size of the slab heap used to allocate kernel sessions from 900 to 933. I could copy over all my type info and all that, but I don't really feel like doing that. Also, did the stream cut out for a second there? There was like a chat disconnected and reconnected, and so I can't tell if it cut out for a second. But yeah, the only difference in the kernel is the modification of this slab resource count for kernel sessions from 900 to 933. And K sessions are super straightforward. If I go to local types, K session. K session is this kernel object which represents a connection between a service provider and a servant's client. Got a server session, a client session, some state. It's very simple. Let me see. Server session. This is what's used to implement IPC in the kernel. It's super straightforward. It's a synchronization object. It just maintains a queue of requests. Yeah, it's utterly straightforward. I can show more kernel stuff later if we're interested in that, but that'll wait for the end of the stream. And so I don't actually have to do anything in the kernel right now. Adubs asks, what's a shifted pointer? So this is a feature in newer IDA, not supported, I think, in the pirated version of IDA, where if you type __ shifted, and then a type and then an offset, then the decompiler will know that it's a pointer to something inside of a structure. If you've ever seen decompiler output like adjust a pointer by some value in a loop, this undoes that optimization and allows you to get correct decompiler output, which I find to be really valuable, particularly for intrusive list nodes. Fatsum asks, how far are the OFW surfaces from the ceiling? My inference from this change is that some game is hitting the limit, and I would consider this to be a quote-unquote bug fix, but not a security bug fix. If 900 sessions exist, then an error will occur and the system will just fatal error. And yeah, this adds 33 extra sessions, which presumably fixes whatever use case was hitting the limit for Nintendo. And Reason asks, hey, when do you plan on releasing the Pokemon Home tools? Sometime soonish. I have some tools for interacting with Pokemon Home, but I also don't have anything that would be usable by people other than me, because the way that I interact with Pokemon Home is I type import and then my decryption library into a Python shell, and then I craft stuff by hand, because that's what I know how to do, and I don't need the fancy tools yet. So I would say that the fancy tools will be released after I write the fancy tools. Anyway, this doesn't really need any changes in Atmosphere, but, you know, there's one simple thing we can do. Let me see. I think I actually had an Atmosphere window open. So I've been re-implementing the kernel a lot. I've done a lot of work towards implementing the kernel. This will actually be in libmesosphere. And I have no idea what file I put this in, actually. It's been too long. That's really funny that I can't remember what file this is in. Wow, that's really funny. But yeah, I've been implementing the kernel a lot up through initialization. I'm going to be streaming kernel development in the future. And in particular, I plan on streaming basically all of the work to implement the system calls in the kernel. But I've implemented all of the initialization work. And so we're at the point where system calls are being made. And part of that was doing this kind of init grep-r -i slab. I'm sure that's fine. Current init slab setup. Great. Init, probably. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So slab count is here. The number of K sessions. Mesosphere is always just going to use the maximum number that anything has ever supported. Because we want to maximally support things, and I can do backwards compatibility elsewhere. There's no problem with having fewer. There's no problem with having more supported. There are only problems with having fewer. So with that in mind, 933. Okay, that's that change made, which is super straightforward and easy. Incognito Coder says, do you have any prior experience with embedded programming? And kind of. I mean, the Atmosphere is my first real embedded project. I contributed to Luma and I did some exploit work beforehand. But I learned how to program starting in 2014, writing PK Hex with Cafedix, or Kurt, or however you want to pronounce his name. And I've talked about this on previous streams. I don't remember where, but I learned by figuring out how to hack Pokemon. And so all of my work has been geared around that. And I actually only learned how to program and not just data mine by staring at things in a hex editor. Like 2 years ago-ish, in like late 2016, early 2017 was when I learned how to program. I purchased IDA. It is something that I own. I am not best friends with Jiang Ying. I'm sorry. And how many switches do you own? I own 12 switches plus a light plus a Mariko unit. Actually, I own 2 lights. I forget that I have one for actually using the light. And I had to get the one for 8.0.1 to dump it, or 8.1.1 to dump it. I own a lot of switches. It comes with the territory. It really does. After I finish kernel, and after I merge ADubs' NCM, which is the Nintendo Content Manager PR, the only thing left in the firmware package that won't be re-implemented will be file system services. I'm going to try to do that next year. But most of the operating system isn't re-implemented. There is a lot that isn't done. All of the applets need to be done, like all of the system modules need to be done that aren't the built-in ones, etc., etc., etc. I don't really need a lot of switches. I mean, I own 12 switches, but I have owned at some point or another probably like over 100. I was in this habit during late 2017, early 2018 of purchasing switches, dumping their system partition to look for factory content, and then reselling them on eBay. And I was buying 1 or 2 a week for 7 months, and then reselling them. I never saved their calibration partition because I don't want to like have anything that would prevent people who buy them from being screwed or anything. I didn't sell them for profit, no. I just wanted to look for factory leftovers. Yeah, no, this is my hobby work. This is entirely a hobby, Incognito Coder. This is what I do with my free time. But it is also what I do with all of my free time, and I don't sleep very much, and so I have a lot of free time. Yeah, that venture was extremely fruitful. I have basically complete factory leftovers for versions prior to 1.0 and versions after 1.0, etc. But yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead and get back to diffing, because I have talked about this a little bit too much. Well, I haven't talked about it too much. It's just distracting me from diffing. Let's at least get the diffing done with, and then I can chat. Right? I'm assuming that people are interested in using Atmosphere, and so I would like to finish diffing, update Atmosphere, publish the Atmosphere release, and then start talking to people so that people don't go like, yeah, why haven't you updated Atmosphere yet when I'm just working on differencing it? Like, there's no need to unnecessarily delay that. So I know for a fact that the only thing that's changed is PM, and let's do the same thing. It's hack tool. Did you ever get C7 final check? Yes, I do have C7 final check. Hack tool -t kip1 -- uncompressed is pme.kip process mana.kip1. Okay, so that will decompress the process manager kip, and this will do the same thing. And the only reason I'm doing this is to be able to do the same comparison that I did before. And yes, John Jaded, it is my intention to update Atmosphere and publish the Atmosphere release on stream. I don't see any particular reason not to do that, and so we're going to do that. It's one instruction changed again. It's this one instruction at 6050, and then the GNU build hash. It's the only change. Alright, see, this is why I tactically logged into GitHub beforehand, Fried Keenan. So, no worries. We are already logged in. So that should be fine. What was I doing? All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and load process manager into IDA. I mean, the change is the same thing as the kernel, basically. Wow, I am really failing at navigating right now. Okay. Yeah, let's back it. Okay. I know for a fact the only thing that I care about is it's 6050, so that's going to be 710006050. And then this is like a process manager initialization func. This is an abort and it doesn't detect that it's actually aborting, and so it doesn't recognize the function. And so this is actually nn diag detail vabort impl. And if I tag this as no return, then everything will be good. And yeah, the only difference here is that it's increased the number of sessions for the kernel sessions. This is SVC set resource limit value. Yeah, let me go ahead and open up the older process manager too, so you can see that. See any, do this one too. 6050, same thing where we mark vabort impl as no return. Let me go ahead, make that no return. And let's go back twice. There we are. Yeah, you can see that it is 894 sessions previously, and now it is 927. And that corresponds to the increase of 33 sessions that we saw. There were 900 sessions previously allowed, and they were divided up. 894 go to the system, 1 goes to application, and 5 goes to applet. And now it is just an increase of 33 more to system. And so what I'm going to infer from this is that maybe it's dev unit only or something because they have more sessions in use there, but some game or something that some developer ran into an issue where the system was running out of sessions. And Nintendo has just added 33 more for the system, which will resolve the issue. It's a really straightforward fix. It's not a security fix, but it is a fix. And so let's make the corresponding change in Atmosphere, which is also straightforward. We implement the process manager, so we go to Stratosphere, PM, Source, Impl, PM Resource Manager. And we can see that all of this code is actually implemented here in this Initialize Resource Manager function. That's what this function is. We create handles for all the resource limits, and then we do some firmware version specific changes. And then we figure out stuff, and then we set the resource limit values, which is down here. This is all unrolled in Nintendo's implementation, but that's fine. Doesn't really matter. So let's go ahead and add some extra sessions. We want to note size t extra system session count 920 is 33. Because there are 33 extra sessions for the system region. I am planning on getting Mystery Dungeon DX. I plan on playing it even. I really enjoyed Mystery Dungeon for the DS. My only disappointment is that Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue are being remade instead of Explorers Time and Space, or Time and Darkness and Sky, which are objectively superior games. If HOS version is greater than HOS version 920, except 920 doesn't exist, and we don't actually support minor version detection right now, so we'll do that later. 9.2.0 increased system session limit. Note: currently support detection minor version. We will provide this increase on 9.0.0 plus. This shouldn't impact thing here in undesirable ways. Okay, and then G resource limits. Resource limit group system. Resource sessions equals extra system session count Yes, I am very excited for Animal Crossing New Horizons. It's probably the game that I have been most excited about other than Sword and Shield. I am a huge fan of Animal Crossing. I will plan on spending a lot of time playing it once it comes out. I've never played Pokemon Dash. I think it's probably a waste of time to play Pokemon Dash. And I don't really plan on learning Rust Incognito Coder. I love C++, and I love C++'s compile time programming. And I don't really like Rust syntax. It really puts me off. Rust has a lot of really cool things in it. I think it's a great language. I think the borrow checker is an awesome idea, and the Rust guys have done a really great job of making a language where things are safe. But it's just not for me, I think. Yeah, okay. Let's check. Does PM still compile? I only changed one file. I don't know why I'd make J16 have it. Yeah, okay, it still compiles. So let's go ahead and go to libraries. Lib vapors, include vapors, MS, target firmware. No, it's not target firmware, it's API version. We now support 9.2.0. Okay, and that should cause basically everything to rebuild. But let's be safe anyway. Let's do a make J16 clean. Why vapors? So atmosphere names a bunch of things based on layers of the atmosphere. And vapors is an in-joke. Oh yeah, it's because I love vaping. Vapors is vapors is an in-joke because the atmosphere is made up of gases, and so it kind of works in that way. Though it's a stretch, it's a huge stretch. But the real joke is it allows me to make the vaporware joke. Like lib vapors is vaporware, and that joke in particular is really funny to me, and it was funny enough to me to name the library after that joke. But in reality, it's just because I'm a devoted member of #VapeNation. I am a devoted vapor. I own many joules. I use whatever the kids use these days, the USB sticks that allow you to vaporize nicotine. That's sarcasm. I don't vape in any way. But, you know, whatever floats your boat. That was all sarcasm, just to be clear. Here. Yeah, okay, that should be all straightforward. Oh, I should also make the kernel changes. So the reason Atmosphere doesn't boot right now is actually a Fuse problem. If I go to Fuse Secondary and I go here, there's kernel patches that we apply, and these make fs.man-in-the-middle work. And, you know, it's a bunch of stuff that I have written by hand over time. But that's fine. The important thing to note is that the kernel changed, and we identify the kernel based off of its hash. And so, in order to support 9.2.0, we need a kernel patches entry for it. So, the kernel is basically the same as 9.0.0, so let's just do this. 9.2.0. Let's do note 9.2.0 has identical kernel layout to 9.0.0, so patches may be reused. And then we need the kernel hash. Yeah, no, once the kernel is re-implemented and once the file system services are re-implemented, we don't need to patch anything, and I'm super excited about that. That is going to be super exciting. And so it looks like I have the patch offset as 1CO and it goes to 90,000. Let's go. Let's select from 1CO to up to 90,000. Let's SHA-256 it. This is how I do this for real, by the way, is I copy that way. And here's what you do if you're an intellectual. Turn on regular expressions. Search for a 2-character sequence. Replace it with 0x-1 space or comma space. Replace all. Okay, there we go. That is our formatted hash. That is how I've done that for every update, just to be clear. Did I not select everything? I must not have selected everything. Oh, right, there's more past there. I forget that my window size isn't as big as it once was. Cool. So that's how we do that. I don't know why chat keeps cutting in and out. I keep getting notifications that I have disconnected and reconnected to the chat room. But yeah, that's how I do hashes. I super recommend it. It's a really intellectual strategy. Anyway, that should honestly be all that's actually needed to support 9.2.0 in Atmosphere. So let's see, git status, git add, git diff, staged. Git commits, PM, say, add support for 9.2.0. Great. And then let's build Atmosphere. Oh, wait. Git status. If we're going to do a release, I should also git subrepo push libraries. Let's give this a second. I think it should just work. Quote unquote, just work. So let's see. This is Atmosphere libs. This is going to be like automatically generating merge commits, etc. for all of the work that I've done since the last time that I updated Atmosphere. I hate the fact that there's not really output. It might be like -VV or something. Yeah, let's get output. Let's redo the work, but with output. Yeah, that's better. I'm a lot happier with this. The real question is if Cyrzem will stream the release of the obligatory shadow update. Yes, if a shadow update is needed, I will fix it on stream and do that on stream. It would be embarrassing, but I will do it. Hopefully there aren't any shadow fixes needed. This is such a simple update that I would be really surprised if there were any problems. But you never know. I fuck up things all the time. I'm really bad at programming, and so just gotta do this. Gotta do this way sometimes. Eat something really spicy while making a fix if there has to be a shadow fix. I'll consider it. I mean, if there really is a shadow fix needed, I will make some coffee and sit down and, you know, do this the right way. But I'm really not expecting that. I have no idea why this is taking so long. But I guess we're waiting. Are things happening? Let me actually open up the task manager. Go to performance. Are things happening? I would just like to be assured that things are happening. Doesn't really look like much is being used here. Yeah, no, that's just typical Windows bullshit. Okay. So I recently updated my hardware to a 64 core processor. Or 32 core processor, and I allocated 16 cores and 16 gigabytes of memory to this virtual machine. Oh, hey, yes. Awesome, it's done. Great. Now let's make J16 dist. Cool, so that'll take a little bit to build. And yes, Kiwi Airbirds. I do all of my streaming from inside of a virtual machine. This is just for operational security reasons. I don't want to accidentally like fuck up my OPSEC. And it's having a clean environment that I know I can't mess up is nice. Sure. So I built this last week, actually. No, Nomura. I update my hardware roughly every 5 years, and I last got a new PC in 2015. And my old PC had an i7 4790K and was actually solid enough for me to do development on, but it had been 5 years. It was time for me to get a new computer. I set myself a budget of it had to cost less than IDA cost me. And so I finally switched from Intel to AMD. I'm using a 3790X. I have 64 gigabytes of memory instead of 16 now. I have a 2080 Super instead of a 980 Ti. I'm using a Thermalright Silver Arrow cooler. I updated finally from a hard drive to a solid state drive. I expect that I will update my computer again in 5 years. I update my computer every 5 years. It has been 5 years. I will update again in 5 years from now. Hubert asks, why does Atmosphere have an E acute in the name? Is there a joke behind it or something? Yeah, so when I was working on the Jamais Vu exploit with Motizazer a long time ago, in December of 2017, he and I hacked Trust Zone together, collaborating. He actually wrote the payload that executed in EL3 for the first time. We were testing on my hardware. I found the Wake from Sleep issue, but he wrote the code that was running. It was awesome. I love working with him. But we decided that we wanted to release the bug together. And he is French. And Tux, who is the other primary Atmosphere developer, is French. And I realized that the people who were going to be working on Atmosphere were me and a bunch of French people. And then the Jamais Vu name came about because we knew that the same bug worked on later firmwares, and we really wanted to call, it's the same bug twice because they didn't actually fix it, Deja Vu. And then I realized that, if we do Deja Vu, then the first one can be Jamais Vu, since, it's the name kind of works in that way. And at that point, we are naming 2 exploits in French, and everyone who's working on Atmosphere other than me is French. And it would be really funny if we name all of our exploits and our custom firmware and everything in French. And so because that would be funny, and in fact it is funny, that's what we've done. Atmosphere is in French. I did the big June 15th changelog last year in French. I don't speak a word of French, so I had to ask for help in getting that translated. Yeah, it is just a meme to name things in French at this point. Also, it looks like Atmosphere built. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to need to test that on the host. Oh, sorry. I definitely just knocked the microphone. Sorry about the loud noise that probably caused. That was me hitting the microphone with my Switch. Let me turn this off. Power turn off. Okay, then in the host, let me connect. Will it show up? Yes, it did. Okay, I don't think you guys can see this, but in the host, stuff is working now. I have my Switch plugged in. Atmosphere out. Let's take this. Let's copy it over. I guess I have to Control C, don't I? If I want to copy between guest and host. Okay, fine. I will copy this properly. How many displays do I use? I have 2 27-inch displays that are 1440p. This VM is actually a 1080p window on one of my displays right now. I'm not streaming in 1440p because I think that it will probably render worse for most people who don't have 1440p displays. If people are interested, I can stream in 1440p in the future. But yeah. Hey, Jam. Okay. Atmosphere should be updated. I need to change my BCT.ini because I have some configuration changes in the one that I use locally. So let's do that. Sorry that you can't see any of this. Hyper-V, which is what I'm using for the virtual machine, doesn't really support USB pass-through. I would love... I need to figure out before I do kernel streams how to get USB pass-through into the VM so that I can just connect to my switch from it, etc. Atmosphere is booting. And there's the Nintendo Switch logo. Okay, yes, my Switch says 9.2.0 AMS 0.10.2. Cool. Okay. Excellent. With that in mind, let's get status. I need to do this anyway. I should have done this before. That was really stupid of me, actually. Libraries, libvapors include... Oh man, I'm gonna feel super stupid when I have to change this again because it's in libvapors. 10.3. That's dumb. I should have done that in the first place. That's totally my bad. And git status, git commit -m ms bump version to 0.10.3. Git subrepo push libraries. Kiwi Birds, you should update Atmosphere first and then your Switch, but it doesn't really matter. Right, I need to do -vv again. It doesn't really matter what order you do them in, but you're probably better off doing it Atmosphere first. Okay, cool. That is make J16 clean, make J16 dist. Should have done that in the first place. Sorry you guys have to wait the extra time for Atmosphere to compile. Oh well, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, I guess you get to hear me criticize myself a little more, which is always fun, so I hear. Archidate says, I'm assuming if the rumors about Gateway cracking the light are true, we'll get an open source port into Atmosphere. I don't want to commit to anything with regards to Gateway's chip because I don't know if it's real or how it works or not. I will make statements about Gateway's chip after we know how their chip works and after it's a real thing that exists. Let me check sept. Am I doing this right? Subsecondary. Okay, yeah, it's building the proper ranks. Great, okay. Huh, you have an Atmosphere issue booting into a fresh sysnand. That sounds like an issue with the starter application. I thought we fixed all of the issues related to that. It would surprise me if that were a thing. I can do a system format and check out starter later if needed. Or if there's a crash report, you should just send that to me and I will look at it and fix it. I will fix any report that I can reproduce or that I get a crash report for. Team Executor, as they call themselves now, is the same people as ran Gateway 3DS in the 3DS days. It is the same people. It is operated by the same web host. And so, because Team Executor is not the original Team Executor from the Xbox days, it is literally just the Gateway 3DS people who purchased the branding. I refer to them as Gateway. Yeah, no, it is the same people. It's not the Team Executor team from the Xbox. Gateway 3DS purchased the name. And so I call them gateway because of that. Yeah, so if you remember me compiling stuff on the Mesosphere stream, the new hardware is making a very big difference in terms of how tolerable this is. Oh, and the other change to Atmosphere that I've made that people will probably care about, I already wrote the changelog for this, is that I now build a zip for debugging that has all of the elfs that can be used for stuff. I don't think I'm going to upload this to GitHub, but I previously ran into issues where I couldn't debug after shadow releases because I would be changing stuff and I wouldn't have the elfs anymore for debugging. And so this should make my fixing your bugs a lot faster if you report bugs after there is a shadow release. Okay, let's go to Atmosphere releases. Yeah, so you get to see how I do an Atmosphere release now, which be prepared to be an odd how dumb I am. Yeah. Edit. Draft a new release. 0.10.3. Let's copy paste this. Yep, this is how we do it. 0.10.3, 0.10.2, yeah, it's the 26th official release. We haven't changed what we're bundled with. Oh, I need to make the bundle, don't I? I can do that, though. That's fine. I don't have a script for that. I always do it by hand. And then I need to take the changelog, atmosphere, docs, changelog. This is also how I do this. Want to find r/n space plus slash plus, and I want to replace that with r/n 1 like that. Great. Right, that's actually empty is supported too. Okay, so that's that. Oh no, wait, that goes in the web changelog. There's probably a better way to do this. Probably. But if there is, I have not learned how to do it yet. Okay. And then... what am I missing? All right, making the bundle. The HTTP man in the middle is disabled by default as of like recent Atmosphere releases. You can enable it if you want, but it's not enabled by default anymore. Okay, let's grab this. Let's open it. And then, this window's so big. Yep, this is how I do this. It's really high-tech stuff, guys. I am a really professional person who does things very professionally. This is how I do this every single update, to be clear. Then let's copy-paste that. Yep, that's how we do it. Okay, I need to tweet about this and post it on Reddit, which I'm going to do on the host. So I can do that while chatting, probably. Yeah, let me go ahead and tweet about this and stuff. You'll hear me typing, but you won't actually see me doing anything. Also, I'm sorry again if my voice is a little off. I'm sick a little at the moment. I said that at the very start of the stream, but I'm not sure that everyone who's here caught that. Man, I have to scroll down in my tweets until I like last tweeted about an Atmosphere release, which I think was on December 5th. Yeah, okay. 0.10.2. Okay. Great. 0.10.3 is released. more bug fixes, memory savings, and support for 9.2.0. Develop joy. Tweet. Okay, tweeted. Hey Chris, 0x7CB. Okay, tweeted that, and then I need to go post happy June 15th on GBA temp, which I'm doing in the host now. I have this like litany of things that I do every time there's an update, where I tweet it, and then I post happy June 15th on GBA temp, and then I post it on Reddit, and then I post it in the Reswitch Discord. And I try to do it in that order so that I don't forget to do things. Me scrolling. Happy June 15th. Post pi. Okay, that should be temp handled. And now let's go to Reddit. Let's log into Reddit. Oh, right. I have 2FA enabled on Reddit, and I don't have Reddit automatically logged in on this PC yet. Let me get a 2FA code. What a pain. What a pain that is. Let me go to my submissions, because I do that too. Submit a new link. Atmosphere 0.10.3 released. 9.2.0 support. And I forget, what URL do I use? I think I use get.atmosphere. Yeah, I do. Okay. Repost 0.10.3. Okay, posted on Reddit, and then I need to copy in like the changelog to Reddit. Man, there's such a list of things to do. What partner are you picking? Probably Mudkip, Matt. Behemoth, I was not going to include the MEMMC album pathing until MaxW does that. That'll probably be 0.10.4, which will happen with the NCM PR anyway. There's going to be another Atmosphere release within the next couple of weeks, within the next week or two, because of the NCM stuff that A-Dubs and I are resolving right now. Okay, added a little summary. Now I need to copy the changelog. Okay, I made the Reddit comment, and now I just need to talk about it in Discord. How safe is injecting saves to your sysstand? I mean, if you're only editing single-player games, it's probably fine. I mean, don't cheat online. Basically, is the guideline that I give people. If you don't cheat online, you're probably fine. Okay, let me make the reswitch announcements post, and then finally I can go back to giving this my full attention. I'm sorry that all of this is happening in the host, but, you know, operation security and all of that. Lisa 0.10.3. Okay, made a post in Reswitched News, and then let me also make one in the other server that I post this in. Okay, that is that. Yellow Sage just pinged me saying, I don't see the change in atmosphere for the PM resource limit change. Oh, I didn't actually get pushed this, did I? Yeah, that's fine. I probably need to edit that. That's pretty funny. I should fix that. Forgot to get push. I mean, it's fine. It just means the release was created off of... It probably made the wrong tag. But there's a way to fix that. Let me do that. I mean, it's not a big deal because the build is the correct... The build is using the correct binaries. Okay, let's actually Google this. Get how to delete remote tag. Fake Stack Overflow. Great. Git push origin 0.10.3. Git create tag. Git tag 0.10.3. Okay, now how do I push tags? Get how to push tags. Again, I am really, really professional. This is how we do things. Yeah. Get push origin tags. I wonder if that broke the release temporarily while I was doing that. I'm sure it's fine. Let's see if I go here. This was 39.2c3, and now it is, that deleted the release page. Let me restore that. Did I just delete all the releases? That'd be sad. Oh, no, wait, not what I wanted to do. So I wanted to go to release. Let's here's 0.10.3. Let's fix this. Existing tag, publish release. Okay, there we go. That's all better now, probably. Yeah, I should update the wiki now too. This is not a shadow release because I didn't change any code. Oh yeah, so I will talk about the other hardware types in a little bit once I'm done updating the wiki. Let me actually update the wiki now. 9.2.0. This is missing other stuff. 9.1.0. Yeah, we have some standards for how we do this. I need to find a page that has the kernel updated in it. Here we go. I can edit this one. Security flaws fixed. No. Go here. Kernel was updated. Change was to increase resource limit for K sessions from 900 to 933. And then I should also go to firm sys modules. Only firm sys module updated was PM. This was increase system resource limit for sessions per the above. And then I need to like add the template for system versions. Nav box versions, category system versions. Save changes. That should be good. And then other thing I want to do is I want to go to templates, navbox versions. I'll edit this to add 9.2.0. Cool. Okay, that should be the wiki updated. Okay, that should be everything needed for updating Atmosphere, so we should be, hopefully, unless people tell me that things are really broken, that should be Atmosphere totally updated. Hopefully. Don't count on that, but as far as I know, everything should be working. I'm really broken. Does that count? That's funny, but no, it doesn't count. Okay, so what do I miss here? Seriously, hoping this would switch Pro. Yeah, okay, so let's talk. Would people rather I talk about the hardware type stuff or talk about my future streaming plans? Those are the two things that I still have to talk about tonight, if people are interested. But if there's something that people would rather hear first, then I will go ahead and do that. Yeah, okay. Let me pull up my notes on this stuff. Yeah, okay. Let me go to the wiki. Switchbrew.org. Where's it going to be listed? Calcio. Probably bus services. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let me also pull up the title list. Switchbrew title list. That's the intellectual way to do that, is via Google. Okay, so platform config. Great. So the switch has some number of hardware types. These are different hardware configurations that Nintendo's OS knows about and provides support for. It also knows about different systems on a chip. If you have heard me say Arista or Mariko, those are the two system on chips that the Switch supports. Arista is the older Switch, including eye-patched older Switches. It is what the launch day Tegra X1 board is. And the hardware revision, the new, more efficient Mariko chip, is what's in the red box switches and in the light. And if I go to SPL types, you'll see the atmosphere has defines for these, where we know that the... I don't have Mariko versus Arista here. But besides the SoC type, Nintendo's OS also knows about different hardware types, and these are referred to by different code names. And each hardware type has different GPIOs, it has different settings, basically, and different hardware RAM profiles, and it supports different things because it's different bits of hardware. And they all have their own platform configuration titles. 81F is Akosa, 820 is Copper, 821 is Hoag, 824 is Icosa on Mariko hardware, which is like the new Redbox switches. Iowa is also a thing that exists, but they call it Icosa Mariko here. And then there's Calcio. And so let's, if people are interested, take a little walk through what these hardware types are and the history of the development of them. So, and this is our best understanding of things as they stand. This was mostly figured out by HexKYZ /I, but mostly HexKYZ over the last week or so. Before I begin, these are determined by fuses. There's different values written to fuses that determines what hardware type the OS thinks you are. So, we know there's Akosa, Copper, Hoag, Iowa, and Calcio. Akosa is the normal switch. And let's actually split these up. We know that Akosa... I'll copy this into a new document rather than fucking with my type header. That's probably the better thing to do. Akosa is the normal switch. Actually, let's make a little category. And then there's also Iowa. /Mariko. And there's the light, and the light is HOAG. And then there's these ones, which are copper and Calcio. And if you have been paying a lot of attention to the Switch's update history, you would know that initially when the US released, it only really supported Akosa. And then, on some firmware version later, it supported Akosa and copper. And then, we found the RCM bug. We found the bug in the boot ROM, and Nintendo started switching to the Mariko system on a chip, and they canceled copper. Support was removed. Support was removed for copper entirely. And then they spindled the light, which has always been Mariko. And so they spindle the light after that, and HOAG gets added, and Iowa gets added, where they decide, okay, to deal with this boot ROM bug, we are going... Do you regret releasing when you did? I didn't release when I did. As you'll recall, bugs leaked. It was not my choice. I would have released later. I think it was a mistake to release so early, but that's not in my control, and we live in the world that we do, and I am making the best of it. Anyway, HOAG was spindled, and this has always been Mariko. Brista. These are all Mariko. And so around 8.x, or rather 6.x, 5.0/6.0, Kosa, Iowa. And this was because 5.0 and 6.0 added support for the Mariko SoC. And actually, the Mariko SoC, it actually leaked a couple months early. We were going to release it in June. It was planned to release on June 15th, and then it leaked in like April, as I recall. But anyway, support was added for Iowa, which is the Mariko switch. This is the like red box Mariko switch. Then in 8.1.1, Kosa, Iowa, and HOAG. And in 9.0.0, support was added for copper. And where things are interesting is that copper is implemented with support basically identical, Calcio. Calcio is added with support identical to what copper used to have. And so Calcio is a new Mariko equivalent to copper. And so let us be big-brained people here and speculate a little bit, understanding that this is speculation. But also, Nintendo, this does seem pretty straightforward. Our speculation is these are I names, or rather I.A names, integrated, console plus handheld. These are H names, although we only have one. Handheld, which is the light. And these are C names, which we say is probably for console. And so let's actually look at what's supported here. There are a couple things that are interesting here, and actually let me go to some atmosphere commits that'll make that more clear. If I go here, where was it that I did this? Yes, boot update to accurate as of 9.1.0. This is where I added support for Calcio. In Calcio, right now the splash screen isn't shown on Calcio, which whatever. Some clocks are only configured on Calcio, which also doesn't matter. But what's interesting is Calcio doesn't have a battery driver. Calcio is not initializing the battery, which is to say Calcio and copper, when it used to be copper, don't support batteries, or they have different battery support rather. If you look at the list of GPIOs, which you can do on Switch Brew, some things that are interesting about copper and Calcio is that Calcio doesn't have a bunch of GPIOs that are present in the normal switch and in the light. But it does have extra HDMI GPIOs, and notably it doesn't have the game card controller GPIOs. The reason the HDMI GPIOs are necessary for Calcio, we speculate, is because on the normal switch, that's handled by the dock. And so the Calcio and copper hardware have these GPIOs added, which manage HDMI because they don't have the dock. No, Ed the Nerd, Calcio is not SDEV. SDEV and EDEV, etc. are all Akosa or Iowa or HOAG. SDEV is not its own hardware type. This is a new thing. And so the development history of this looks like they released the original Switch, and then they started working on what we think is a home console-only version of the Switch, not a handheld. And they called that Copper as a code name at the time. And then after the bugs came out and they switched to the new system-on-a-chip Mariko, they canceled Copper, and they are now reworking on it as Calcio as the new code name for what used to be Copper on Mariko instead of Arista. And our best understanding of Calcio is that it is a home console that does not have the game card controller. And so our best understanding of it at the moment is that it is some kind of digital-only home console. Maybe it is for streaming or something. But I also note that if we look at 9.0.0, if you look at 9.0.0, let me actually go here too. Where was this? There were some other changes in here, but that's not the ones I care about. No, that's not what I wanted. Oh, here it is. In 9.1.0, which was the same time that they added Calcio support, they added a new set of keys used to sign software. That is, they now support the same OS, but software that is signed for this new key generation will only work... it's basically just a different set of keys. And that could possibly, but we don't know for sure, be for Calcio. Zaki Cat says, platform config HOAG and platform config Copper have been present since 2.0.0. Oh, okay. Yeah. 2.0.0. I forgot if HOAG was in there initially. Yeah. So Zaki, what it looks like is initially they only had the first form factor, and then they spindled, or they created placeholders for their console form factor and their handheld form factor. And then they canceled the console-only form factor on Arista, and are now reworking on it in Mariko. But yeah, no, our best understanding of it is that it is a home console that doesn't have a game card slot. So it would be digital only. That's our best understanding of it. Everything is subject to change because this is all operating system level and the hardware isn't released or anything. But yeah, people will probably be interested in that, I think. And if anyone has any questions about the hardware types, I can answer them right now. Feel free to ask questions about them. Man, chat keeps dying. If anyone said anything after Valiant stormed, I'd assume there's some overlap. W player, can you tell if any of them are dev kits? This is unrelated to dev kit versus normal hardware. Dev kits use the same hardware types as normal. Oh, I should also add that there are names for these. This is NX ABCA2. This is NX ABCC. And this is NX ABCB. These are the other code names for these different hardware form factors. Both Calcio and Copper are NX ABCB, and the light is Andromeda, there aren't any NAND size checks, but that's unrelated. There are new DRAM profiles for Calcio, but I don't know what they are. They're just, you know, DRAM profiles. Final Fan asks, what exactly will Mesosphere do? Mesosphere is an open source reimplementation of the kernel. It will serve as an open source reimplementation of the kernel. Also, I won't have to write patches for the existing kernel every time there's an update. I mean, I'll have to implement changes in Mesosphere, which is actually more work. But that said, it will be an open source implementation of the kernel. I rest my case. I do not play Dota 2. Vulkan API support would be nice. Yep, but I'm not working on that. You'll have to talk to Finks about that. Is the Mariko mod chip a meme or it's close? I have nothing to do with that. Gateway claims they're doing it. I don't know. There are reasons to believe them and reasons not to believe them. We'll find out. What do you eat when you rarely eat? I make a lot of spaghetti dishes. I really like chicken piccata. I like sushi, but don't know how to make it. On a typical night, I have some kind of pasta and some kind of meat. It's straightforward and not very much effort. Is there any way someone with very little coding experience could contribute to Atmosphere? Yeah, that's a hard one because Atmosphere requires so much in-depth knowledge of Horizon. The operating system, Atmosphere is in many ways a re-implementation of Nintendo's operating system, and it's kind of more that than a custom firmware a lot of the time. And you kind of need to understand how the operating system works to implement things for it. And so the number of things that people who don't spend a lot of time being familiar with Horizon can do, the number of things people can do is just low. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, no, I'm not on any kind of diet. I am underweight, and so being on a weight loss diet would be a terrible choice. I mean, for the whatever. I am not going to comment on Gateway stuff until it is released and exists, because I know better than to comment on things that don't exist yet. Like, I can't comment on what I think about it until I know what it is, and I know what it does, and I know enough about it to have opinions. I am against paid Wares hardware for the same reason that I am against Wares. But, like, I can't comment more than I don't know enough about it to say. Do you have insomnia? That's a tough one. Some people might say I have insomnia, but I actually feel like I get enough sleep. In a typical night, I go to sleep between like 3 and 4 in the morning, and I get up between like 7 and 8 in the morning. Like, I'm usually sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night. And that's stable for me and consistent, and I've been doing that for years, and I feel like I get enough sleep. But I think some people would call that insomnia, and medical professionals might call that insomnia. So let's go with maybe for do you have insomnia? The other thing I was going to talk about tonight is my streaming plans. So the current development focus, freaking, I don't want to talk about salary. I make enough money to be very comfortable, and let's leave it at that. I mean, I can afford to purchase Ida. Let's leave it at that. W Player says, are you ever going to do anything other than Atmosphere and Pokemon? Hey, Hedgeberg. In the time that you were absent, we updated Atmosphere to support 9.2.0. And support has been like released and pushed and all of that. And I talked about the new hardware type stuff. I talked about how Calcio is this hardware type that they are developing that seems to be console only and seems to be digital only, that we don't know much about other than that yet. And then I was going to talk about my future streaming plans. We're actually at the tail end of this. I probably won't be streaming for too much longer, since I've gotten through most of the content I wanted to get through tonight. But I'm also going to be streaming more pretty soon. So it's not like you guys won't be able to see me stream. Anyway, so Atmosphere has been, or rather I have been, speaking for Atmosphere, working on re-implementing the Nintendo Switch kernel for the last month or so. I've made a ton of progress. I've released a bunch of tools for doing kernel research too. Oh, right, I already have it open, don't I? And actually, let me go ahead and show off one of those tools since it's cool while I talk. Where if I have a new kernel database and I go to 819 NX out. Let's say I open up this kernel database that I just made. Hit a file, load file, parse C header file. Then I implement kernel svc. That'll give me all of the types that I need to then run this other script that I made. And let me actually copy the link for that since I don't want to put my gist on stream. I paid roughly $5,000 for IDA. Let's see, where is this? It's... Sorry, I'm pulling up a script in the host. Yeah, okay, found it. Go to raw, okay, and then if I go to file, script command, I paste this in and I run it. I found the SVC tables and it labeled a bunch of stuff. And then if I go here, we can see that it has automatically labeled all of the system calls, which is like a third of the functions in the kernel. And that is completely automatic. And having automatic SVC labeling is super nice, because it means that we can much more quickly difference updates. I mean, these are all just veneers, but still. IDA is the interactive disassembler. It is used to reverse engineer programs. HPM with no. It labels 500 out of 1499 functions, which is what I said. It labels like a third. You definitely can't label 70% of functions automatically, but it labels all of the SVC veneers and the functions that they call. So I am working on re-implementing the kernel. This is mostly just for having an open source implementation of the kernel. John Jaded, it's a contentious issue. I would say that IDA is much better. Everyone other than me would say that Ghidra is much better. But to be clear, I prefer IDA. But that is my specific use case, which is ARM64 decompilation of low-level stuff. For my use case, which is decompiling the Switch's operating system, IDA is probably the better choice, but Ghidra is probably better for stuff other than that. And so my plan moving forwards, or rather the Atmosphere timeline as I see it, is this week, ADubs, I finish NCM, request merge into atmosphere. Atmosphere 0.10.4 with optional disabled by default NCM. And NCM will be disabled by default once it's merged and until it's been tested extensively, because us fucking up in NCM would be really bad for people's consoles. We don't want to corrupt people's system partitions, and because NCM uses save data and we are modifying save data in NCM, that's going to be disabled by default, which I think is the right choice. We might enable it much down the line when it's been very, very tested, but I'm very excited to have NCM re-implemented and don't feel like it needs to be on by default to be happy about it. I don't really think there are any extensions planned at the moment. NCM is the Nintendo Content Manager. It provides an interface for determining what programs are located where. Then, after that, also maybe this week, I'm depending. I work on kernel. So what would the average user benefit from for NCM? So Iconic, that's like a complicated question because Atmosphere system modules use less memory and are a little more efficient than Nintendo's implementations. They have less boilerplate, but the typical user probably doesn't benefit very much. I mean, we are at the point where Atmosphere is good enough for most use cases, and unless people like come to me with feature requests, we are focused on implementing things in open source so that we can get reference implementations of Horizon public, which is, you know, our goal, more than we are focusing on doing things that have very clear user benefits. Atmosphere likes to re-implement things. I derive a lot of benefit from re-implementing things, and so that's what we're doing. What is the purpose of Thermosphere going forward? We are pretty happy with MMC. Tux's Thermosphere branch right now is a hypervisor, a custom hypervisor that Tux is implementing that will support GDB on hardware. Basically, it will be for debugging, and it will allow us to use GDB to hook up to the kernel and to hook up to the rest of the OS running on hardware. It means that we can debug the kernel, which will be super cool. But the typical user also probably doesn't care about that at all. So, you know. Anyway, so my working on the kernel is going to involve streaming SVC reimplementations. So I implemented the first conceptual part of the kernel off stream during February, where I implemented all of the Horizon kernel's initialization code. And on hardware, my implementation of the kernel creates user processes and starts running them, and it crashes because I don't have any SVCs implemented, and it starts calling SVCs and they're unimplemented, and then it like panics and debug stuff to me. And so the next part of the kernel, or rather the second conceptual part of the kernel, is implementing the interface that user mode uses to talk to the kernel, which are the SVCs or supervisor calls. And my plan is to stream most, if not all, of my work on those. The kernel database that I have is good enough to do that work. And so we will be streaming. And so you'll see a lot more of me streaming going forwards as I'm working on this. A lot like how I re-implement kernel loader on stream. And I don't know if it'll be the first time that I'm streaming doing the kernel, or the second time streaming doing the kernel, but Cluedo has expressed some interest in showing up on stream, and so he will probably be a guest to talk about how the kernel works on one of those streams, which would be fun too. Hedgeberg asks, do you have any fun R2 stories? I have never used Redair 2, so I have no fun R2 stories. Literally never used it. Kind of asks, does that mean your programming is self-taught? Yeah, I self-taught programming by working on PK Hex with Kurt in 2014. And my programming has been pretty much self-taught since then. But I spend hours and hours doing this every single day. I mean, I spend more than like 6 hours doing this every day of my life. And so I have gotten a lot of practice in over the last... I started in 2014, so it was 6 years, 6 years ago that I started this as of last month. I don't really have opinion on cryptocurrencies. I don't buy them. I don't really use them. I don't really care about them. Yeah, I just don't have opinions on cryptocurrencies. Asks, do you not sleep? Yeah, I sleep very little. I mean, I sleep like 3 to 4 hours a night. That is very relevant to my work here, the fact that I sleep so little. But I am stable on 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and so that's how much I get. How did you get to be... Oh, no, I don't do biphasic sleeping. I sleep between 3 or 4 in the morning and 7 or 8 in the morning. How do you get so proficient in low reverse engineering? Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this in previous streams, but it's just a matter of having put in all of the time and all of the practice. Like, I spent years where the only thing I knew how to do was data mining Pokemon games by staring at them in hex editors, and I learned C# via trial and error, writing PK hex. And if you spend all of your time practicing doing this stuff, you just get really good at it. I wanted to know how Pokemon games work, so I tried to reverse them, and I didn't do a very good job. But then the next time I tried, I did a little better, and the next time I tried, I did a little better. And I gained all of this experience and all of these habits over the course of like 5 years of doing this every day. There's no substitute for experience. The best advice I can give if you're interested in this stuff is find something that you like and that excites you and do projects. And every project that you do and work on will get you better for future projects. Fred Keenan, I know no skateboarding tricks. I don't own a skateboard. I'm sorry for your loss. And don't sleep less than you need to get by. I sleep 3 or 4 hours because that is how much I need to be myself. If I did less than that, it would be like I would fall apart. But 3 to 4 is sustainable for me. You should sleep however much is sustainable for you. Like if you wake up and you feel like shit sleeping 4 hours, don't sleep 4 hours. Sorry, I'm not going to stream learning how to skateboard. John Jaded. I have a lot of habits that Hedgeberg says are very bad. I don't think I have that many bad habits. I feel bad no matter how much I sleep. Oh man, Nikki, that is a mood. Wow. Okay. Sorry, that's really funny. Yeah, me too. Me too. I don't really drink coffee. I have a coffee machine and I use it sometimes, but I drink a lot of tea. I drink a lot of green tea in particular, and I drink a lot of matcha. My favorite matcha is David's Tea's Grand Cru matcha, if you are super into matcha, but that's, you know, that's brand matcha. I'm sure anything is fine. And I also really, really like white teas. I like Silver Needle white tea. And I like... There's this tea shop near my house that I really like that has this, like, vanilla sencha tea that I drink a lot of. I have been sleeping 3 or 4 hours since I was a teenager, which was quite a while ago. I would say that I have always been sleeping this much. Or this little, rather. Yeah, I mean, the habits question is just, I have a lot of habits that work really well for me, and I think I am objectively very efficient and I navigate the tools that I use very efficiently, and I get things done very quickly. But also, I've been told by Hedgeberg, whose opinion that I trust and consider to be generally correct, that my opinions are dog shit and I should feel bad about them. And so I think that my habits are probably bad. They work for me. Works for me. And yeah, Fred Keenan, I have a lot of verbal tics. Usage of objectively as a word is one of them that I'm aware of. Andromeda asks, do you think the kernel implementation will help improve emulation down the line? Yes, actually. That's a good point about the kernel, is that emulators will benefit a lot from it. They're already benefiting a lot from it. The people who work on Yuzu and RyuGNX and I have all been talking, and Yuzu has already gotten a bunch of accuracy improvements to their scheduler and stuff by talking to me about the kernel and by looking at Mesosphere's code. RyuGNX is going to benefit from being able to look at and take my kernel code. I would expect Mesosphere to be a huge boon for emulators who are interested in accurately emulating the kernel, because they will have an open source reference copy to look at. Yeah, I mean, you show the kind of habits that people who are self-taught and work alone show. Yeah, that makes sense because I am self-taught and I mostly work alone. Yeah, it's not bad, but it doesn't scale. Makes sense. You're welcome, Iconic. I'm glad you enjoyed the stream. And what was the other question here? I feel like there was some other question that I'm missing. Nope, doesn't look like there's any other question. Oh, Fried Keenan asked something. Wait, did you? Oh, what's your favorite TV show? That's the one. So my favorite TV show for a long time was BoJack Horseman, and that ended in February. I love BoJack. Super highly recommend it. Also recommend Mother of Learning, which is a web novel that I finished. Not a TV show, but I still recommend it. I was following it for like the better part of a decade, and it's fantastic. I super recommend it. You should finish BoJack. I really liked the ending, Hedgeberg. And I guess my favorite TV show right now, if you mean things that I'm actively watching, is I started watching Steven Universe a week and a half ago, and I'm really enjoying it. But I'm a week and a half into it, so I don't have strong opinions about it other than I like it. Sorry, Reign of Computer. I am not a furry. I'm sorry for your loss. Would your work on Atmosphere be relevant to other semi-embedded systems? Probably. I am very interested. Oh, actually, wow. How did I not say this? Wow. Okay, totally slipped my mind. Kernel. One of my long-term goals is I want to run Horizon on my desktop PC. I want to be running Horizon on x64. I don't want to like play commercial Switch games or anything. That's not really my goal. But I want the Horizon kernel and the built-in system modules and like the low-level Horizon APIs to work on x64. Whether that's QEMU or my actual PC's hardware or whatever is, you know, up for debate. But in the long term, I plan on adding support for the Mesosphere kernel implementation for x64, which I think will be really cool. Users don't really benefit, but I think it'll be really cool. Anyway, do you think we'll ever see cold boot? Not really, no. I mean, a cold boot exploit would require a system save vulnerability on less than 3.0.2, less than, not less than or equal to. And I just don't think that's going to happen. If someone finds a system module save exploit on a lower firmware, I will implement it and we will do cold boot, but I don't expect that to happen, and I wouldn't expect that to happen if I were you. Also, I consider the RCM exploit to be cold boot, and so, you know, whatever you want to say. I would agree with Hedgeberg about there being like a 0% chance of true cold boot on a hard modelless system. And Valiant Stormed. Atmosphere will be relevant to other semi-embedded systems. I would like, in the long term, if you have been following me for a long time, which probably nobody here has except for Hedgeberg, you may know that Atmosphere is Atmosphere NX on GitHub. And this is because I, before Atmosphere NX, was working on a personal project that I called Atmosphere 3DS. And Atmosphere 3DS was a re-implementation of the 3DS's kernel for the ARM9 processor. Which I thought, hey, you know, the ARM11 kernel is really big, and I don't know that I can do that. It might be too big for me to do. So I will just target the ARM9 one. I'll just implement kernel 9, and that's Atmosphere 3DS. Of course, I'm now implementing the whole kernel for the Switch, and so Atmosphere 3DS, I guess, when I get back to it, will be kernel 11 and kernel 9. But in the long term, I plan on also implementing the 3DS kernel. I think that will be really cool, and I love the 3DS, and even though the Switch gets all of my attention these days because it has Pokemon games and the 3DS does not have new Pokemon games, once the Switch is done, I've said publicly I'm not going to be putting a ton of effort into future consoles. I am sticking with the Switch. The Switch is where I will stop working so hard as a hacker. But I will be working on the 3DS kernel re-implementation again in the future, which is Atmosphere 3DS. Yeah, no, I would love to have you involved for the 3DS, Hedgeberg. I think Tux will probably be interested in working on it too. You know, I am looking forward in a couple of years to going back to 3DS stuff. And I think that in the long term, having an open source kernel for the 3DS will be beneficial for the same reason that having one for the Switch will be. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Just slowly building out 3DS stuff, I'm looking forward to. But the Switch is my priority until its end of life. And probably after that, but, you know. And yeah, the other like planned target for the kernel that will happen sooner rather than later is we are going to build the kernel targeting QEMU for ARM64, so that we can, you know, do like semi-hosting and have debug running it under QEMU, so that we can like run fuzzers and stuff on the kernel. I am trying to implement the kernel as accurately as possible. Ideally, if there are bugs in my kernel implementation, they are real kernel bugs, and if we can fuzz the kernel, then we'll hopefully find any bugs if they exist, although frankly, I don't think there are security bugs in the kernel. Do you think Nintendo is going to release a new system in the next 2 years? I deleted it. Did I delete it? Yeah, I did. That's a shame. Hedgeberg, you missed my talk about Calcio, but we know for a fact that Nintendo made the original Switch hardware type Icosa, and then they spindled after that around 2.0 Copper and Hoag. Our current assumption is that C names are console names, H names are handheld names, and I names are integrated names. And then they canceled Copper when we found the RCM bug. Hoag has just always been a Mariko device. Iowa is the same thing as Icosa, but on Mariko. And Calcio is the same thing as Copper, but for Mariko. And Calcio, so far as we know it, is a home console that doesn't have a game card controller. And yeah, we figure it is like a digital-only home console. That is, it's not guaranteed or anything. Anything can change, but it is our honest best guess that Nintendo is working on a home console that is digital-only that they will be releasing. Well, who knows if they'll be releasing it. The only thing we know is that they have been making changes to support it in the OS recently. Well, I do think Copper's canceling it is directly linked with the RCM bug, because support for Copper was removed immediately after the RCM bug was reported and found, and the new Calcio is Mariko, which was spindled both to save costs and to fix the hardware vulnerabilities. So I feel pretty comfortable saying that Copper's canceling is pretty linked with the RCM bug. I have no ability to comment on the storage models or anything. We don't know anything about it other than the fact that the board exists. Nintendo is doing development surrounding it, and we think it's digital only. 9.1.0 added a new set of keys that can be used to sign programs, and that might be for the digital only platform. And actually, it's also possible that this is not a switch, it's something new, but they're reusing the Horizon operating system, and the new keys are their way of supporting the new console while still using the same operating system. Anything's possible within that framework. The only thing we can say for sure is that they're working on this hardware, and right now we know that it is a Mariko chip, so the same chip as the Lite and the Redbox Switch. It doesn't have the game card controller, and it does have HDMI support, where the original Switch used the dock. And it's because of the HDMI support where the original Switch used the dock that makes us think it's digital only, and a digital only home console. Well, HDMI makes us think it's a home console. No game card controller, we think, means it's digital only. Actually, HexKYZ's speculation is that they might be trying to do a streaming platform. We have no idea if that's true. There's no reason to think that's true, but it is one of the possibilities that we think might be a thing. There's no evidence to support that over anything else. But it would be cool, I guess. We'll find out. I'm sure that in the next year or 3, Nintendo will, release stuff. Yeah, I would also love a Horizon-based streaming platform. We'll find out when they announce it. I was thinking more Google Stadia than Roku, but we'll find out. I mean, again, we can't know anything in advance except for what the OS does. The reasons to believe it's a home console are the support for HDMI, where the original Switch used the dock, and the fact that it does not set up the battery in the same way that the other stuff supports the battery. And so the lack of battery and the lack of battery and the addition of HDMI stuff says home console to us, but also we can't know for sure. In before it gets canceled again. Yeah, that could happen too. How do we know it's not just an expensive paperweight? We don't. There is no way for us to know anything for sure, and I would like to be very clear about that. We have no way to know for sure. Oh man, bad stuff folder. That's so dumb. Caution is a habit, guys. Be cautious. Always be cautious. Don't be dumb. Yeah. You see Copper's platform config directly says it's a console/non-handheld device. Yeah, I believe that. Zacky Cat, I totally believe that. Yeah, I mean, Jim, the moral of the story is not hide it better. The moral of the story is be cautious. And being cautious means not doing bad things, because people who are cautious know better than to risk doing bad things. Anyway, what's the worst thing you've ever done? Pass. I can't think of anything that is really good to shitpost about here. I guess I signed a Shrek Sept for you once, and that was a pretty bad thing for me to do. But I mean, the real answer is pass. We're almost 2 hours in. I knew this would be a short stream because there's like nothing changed in 9.2.0. But I'm going to be streaming again soon to do kernel development. I will take a couple last minute questions, and I think I'll call it a night. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I know the diffing was like, there wasn't any real diffing to do because nothing changed except for the one instruction in the kernel and process manager. But, you know, hopefully it was interesting anyway. What are your dreams usually about? My dreams are usually pretty abstract. I have aphantasia, which is to say I do not have a mind's eye and cannot visualize things in a non-metaphorical sense. I actually only learned that that was not a metaphor for a lot of people last year. And my dreams are hard to remember. And when I do remember them, they're very abstract. I've had a pretty good day today. I mean, I'm sick. So my day's been kind of shitty in that sense. But I've enjoyed this, so it's been a good day. Factory firmware. Factory firmware has been helpful for understanding the history of the system and helpful for understanding how different components get set up, which helps me to write atmosphere. Hedgeberg asks, why did you invite Cluedo but not me? So cruel, I'm wounded. I did invite you. I explicitly asked, would you be interested on being on one of the kernel streams? Granted, I asked this 6 months ago, so I forgive you for not remembering. But to be clear, you are more than welcome to show up on those streams. I would love to have you on, Hedgeberg. I remember this because I asked you at the same time that I asked Cluedo. I actually might have asked Cluedo first, in which case I apologize for that, since you are, by any metric, a better friend. But I definitely did invite you to do kernel stuff. Or well, not kernel stuff, to show up on a stream. I don't remember if it was kernel stuff specifically, but I remember I invited Cluedo to do kernel stuff in like last July or last August, which is how long I've been planning on doing Mesosphere 4. And then I messaged you asking if you would be interested, because this was like when I started streaming, asking if you would be interested in showing up for something. But yeah, no, you are perfectly welcome to show up on streams. I would love to have you for chatting. Cyrus had to go to ASMR when. Yeah, so you didn't get so much of my typing today, Fried Keenan. I know that you like to listen to me type, as you have said in the past, and I didn't do very much of it today. Who are you endorsing in the primary? Oh man, Hedgeberg, that's a tough one. Here is my current take. My preferred candidate in the primary is Elizabeth Warren. But Buttigieg and Klobuchar dropped out today and endorsed Biden, and I want a progressive to take the nomination and not Biden. So I will endorse Bernie Sanders and will be voting for him tomorrow, because I don't think that splitting the progressive vote when all of the moderates except for Bloomberg have dropped out and endorsed Biden is wise. In my ideal world, Warren does better in the contests that have happened, and /or Buttigieg and Klobuchar didn't drop out today, and I would be voting for Warren. As of yesterday, I was planning on voting for Warren. As of today, I will be voting for Bernie. Sanders is an infinitely better choice than Biden. That's what I have to say on the matter. Behemoth says, are JPEG deck and CapServe out of scope for Atmosphere? They are not out of scope. But the Atmosphere code has a very specific style, etc. If you want to work with me to get them into Atmosphere Master, I am happy to work with you to get them into Atmosphere Master. All re-implementations are desirable. You can see my reviewing with ADubs. It'll be work. Talk to me in a couple of months when the kernel is less of a focus, and I can sit down and review it with you and go over it, and we make sure that it's accurate and it's lean and it's optimized and it's doing what Stratosphere code I expect to do, and I'm happy to have it merged in. All re-implementations are welcome, and I super encourage people who want to re-implement Horizon to talk to me about getting their stuff into Atmosphere. We really should do all our primaries on the same day. But yeah. Colorful Monk says, would a similar feature as manual HTML redirection be possible for control.NACP? Yeah, that's more complicated because it's not accessed by the game itself. I have been like chewing over ways to do NACP redirection for a long time. I would really like to do that. Yeah. Oh yeah, Behemoth, when I say it'll be a lot of review work, it'll be a lot of review work. Like, I'm sorry in advance. I'm very particular. But if you'll notice on the NCM review, I have been pushing commits. I have been like instructing ADubs via direct messages on how to do things and giving advice for the better part of like 7 months. Once you're at the point where it's done and you want to get it merged, I will be very directly involved with you, and it will be us working together to get it into Atmosphere. Choice of Linux distro. I don't use Linux. I use Windows. Hedgeberg set up a VM for me that used Arch Linux the other week, and I liked it a lot. The shell in it, Fish, was really cool, and I would say better than CMD, but I like Windows enough that it is still my operating system of choice. Do you have any ideas for homebrew for the Switch itself? There is homebrew I want to write, but the operating system stuff is my focus, and I don't have the time for both. You know, you're sarcastic, but as someone who uses CMD and not PowerShell, let me assure you, it's a big statement, Hedgeberg. Honestly, PowerShell is just too complicated. Genuinely, PowerShell has so much stuff that I feel like I would just spend forever trying to figure out how to use it. And like the whole using like objects instead of just text input output seems super powerful and super cool, but not something I know how to do. Yeah, exactly. It seems super powerful, and like the object support that I was just saying seems super powerful, but IDK how to use it, man. I would rather just have the text-based input output for CMD that I'm familiar with. Sometimes simple is better. Well, not better, but you know, preferable. Top 3 reasons why you prefer Windows other than other OSs. You know, I could give you a bunch of bullshit about why I prefer Windows, but let's be real, the real answer for why I use Windows is because I have spent all of my life using Windows, and I know how to use Windows, and I have years and years of habits for how to use Windows efficiently, and it just does not make any sense for me to switch to Linux because I would have to spend all of that time relearning all of the habits and reteaching myself how to be efficient. Also, I use a lot of Microsoft tools. I used to write a lot of C# when I was working on PK Hex a lot. And I like C# a lot, and I like Microsoft's ecosystem for .NET a lot. That matters less with .NET Core being a thing, but it used to be an argument. Have I tried XONSH? Never tried it. And okay, I will take like one more question if there are still questions to ask, but otherwise it's been 2 hours. I think I'll call it a night. I'll still be on Reswitched and on Discord doing my usual stuff. Man, Python shell scripting language sounds super weird. Zacky Cat, that's React OS. You're asking for React OS, and it exists. Nikki, next release probably in the next week when we're doing NCM merge. That'll be Atmosphere 0.10.4. Atmosphere x64. I don't know what I intend to use it for. I just want Horizon on x64. And Nomura Kenji. This will be my last question. ADubs, I already answered that earlier. Nomura Kenji. I don't have any hopes in particular for the new hardware. I am looking forward to seeing what it is, but I don't have any hopes in particular. We'll see. And okay. Let's call it a night. Hope you all had fun.